Chapter 1. Echoes of What Once Was. The day unfolded with a stillness that only magnified the hollow ache within Amelia's chest. She moved through her morning routines in a quiet, measured way, as if somehow the absence of sound could shield her from the familiar, unwelcome thoughts that crept in like shadows. Her fingers skimmed the kitchen countertop, and she found herself lingering on a chipped corner, a silent witness to countless mornings shared, cups of coffee brewed in harmony, and laughter that now felt like a distant melody barely remembered. As the world outside her window stirred to life, Amelia sat alone, the house now a hollow shell of its former warmth. Every room seemed to carry a memory, faded, softened by time, yet still sharp enough to draw out the ache she had worked so hard to conceal. A photo frame sat face down on the corner of the table, hidden away as though denying its existence could erase the years it represented. But memories have a way of clinging, as stubborn as ivy, woven into the very fabric of a home, a life. Today marked 2 years since she and Elijah had chosen to part ways. Time had passed, and they had both built their own lives, separate and distinct from the one they had once shared. Yet, in moments like these, when silence settled heavily and there was nowhere to hide, the memories flooded back, drenching her mind with bittersweet images of a life that had once seemed so certain. She closed her eyes and let herself drift back to that last autumn they had spent together, when the air had been crisp and they had walked through the park, wrapped in the comforting blanket of shared laughter and unspoken dreams. There had been a sense of wholeness then, a quiet assurance that no matter what came, they would weather it together. And yet, the very things that had once bonded them had, over time, frayed at the edges, unraveling into the quiet unraveling of two lives. It had started slowly, like a faint crack in glass, barely noticeable at first, until one day it had spread, branching out in all directions, impossible to ignore. They had drifted without even realizing it, each holding tight to their own growing fears and doubts. Love had been present, but it had shifted, morphed into something that neither could quite grasp, a shape they could no longer recognize. Amelia's thoughts turned to those last months, to the slow decay of their connection. She remembered how the house, once filled with warmth and light, had become quiet, almost unnervingly so. Even the simplest routines had felt weighted, strained under the tension of unspoken truths. In the evenings, they had sat on opposite ends of the couch, lost in their own worlds, the space between them stretching wider with every silent night. She had often wondered if things could have been different, if they could have salvaged what was left. But the decision to part ways had come not out of anger, nor out of resentment. Rather, it had been an acceptance that their paths, once intertwined, had quietly diverged. They had clung to the notion of each other, of a shared life, until even that had grown heavy, like an anchor pulling them down, tethering them to a version of themselves they could no longer sustain. But now, 2 years later, as she sat in the soft glow of the morning light, Amelia felt a strange calm settle over her. The pain was still there, embedded deep within, but it had become a part of her, woven into her very being. She understood now that it wasn't about erasing the past or burying the memories. It was about carrying them forward, letting them breathe, letting them settle into the quiet corners of her heart without letting them consume her. The house, empty as it was, still carried pieces of him. An old book on the shelf, the faint scent of pine from a sweater he had left behind, a postcard from a city they had planned to visit together but never did. These remnants were ghosts of the life they had shared, but they were also markers of a journey, of a love that had been real and profound, even if it hadn't lasted forever. As she rose from the table, her gaze fell upon the photo frame, still turned face down. She reached for it, her fingers tracing its edges before lifting it upright. The image stared back at her, a snapshot of a moment long past, a day by the lake, the two of them caught in a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. There was a time when this picture had represented everything she had hoped for, a life unbroken and whole. But now, as she looked at it, she felt something shift within her, a recognition that this memory, though beautiful, was just that, a memory. With a steady hand, she placed the frame back on the table, upright this time, no longer hidden away. It was a small gesture, but to her, it felt like an acceptance, a quiet acknowledgement of the life she had lived, the love she had known, and the path that now stretched before her, unseen, perhaps daunting, but hers alone to explore. The morning light spilled through the window, casting a gentle warmth over the room, softening the edges of everything it touched. And as Amelia took a deep breath, a sense of quiet resolve filled her heart. She did not yet know what lay ahead, but in this moment, she felt the faint stirrings of something new, a hope, perhaps, or simply a readiness to face whatever the future held. She had learned that the heart, though fragile, was resilient, capable of holding both the sorrow of what once was and the quiet anticipation of what could yet be. And as she moved through her empty home, the echoes of the past slowly faded, leaving behind only a gentle, unbroken silence. A silence that felt, in its own way, like a new beginning. Chapter 2. The Weight of Empty Spaces. Elijah moved through his days like a man walking through fog, each step careful yet weighed down by a quiet emptiness he could neither define nor shake. The rhythm of his life had settled into a predictable cadence, a steady drumbeat of tasks and routines that occupied his hands but left his mind adrift. He would wake in the early morning, just as he had always done, yet now, without the warmth of another presence beside him, the morning air seemed colder, sharper, almost indifferent. The apartment was smaller than the home he and Amelia had once shared, yet its emptiness felt vast, as though it held too much space for just one person. The walls, painted in a pale, impersonal beige, seemed to echo back at him, an unspoken reminder of what was missing. He had chosen not to bring many belongings with him when they separated, leaving behind the furniture, the framed art, even the blankets they had collected over the years. The decision had been practical at the time, a clean break, he had told himself. But in moments like these, with nothing around him that felt familiar, he wondered if he had left too much behind. He poured his morning coffee, watching the dark liquid fill his cup, its warmth rising in wisps. It was the same brand he and Amelia had shared, the one she had introduced him to years ago. He had grown accustomed to its richness, its earthy undertones, yet now, each sip tasted vaguely of loss. He would never admit it, but he missed the way she would add just a touch of cinnamon to her cup, a habit she had picked up from her mother. It was a small thing, a detail so minor he would have once laughed at himself for remembering. But now, in the quiet of the morning, that memory lingered like a shadow, uninvited yet impossible to ignore. As he sipped his coffee, his gaze drifted to the small plant on his windowsill. A gift from Amelia on his birthday a few years back. It was the one remnant he had allowed himself to keep. Its leaves were slightly yellowed now, neglected in his distracted days, but it clung to life, its roots buried deep in the soil, stubbornly resilient. Sometimes he found himself staring at it, as though it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. He thought about how plants, when given care, could thrive, stretch toward the light, unfurl their leaves. Yet in his absence, in his lack of attention, it had faltered. Perhaps, he thought, they had been much the same, two people who, without the constant tending of their bond, had slowly drifted into neglect. The hours passed in a quiet blur, the afternoon arriving with a soft, gray light that settled over the city like a blanket. Elijah found himself wandering through the streets, hands in his pockets, head lowered against the wind. The sidewalks were busy, filled with strangers moving in their own worlds, unaware of the man who drifted among them like a ghost. He found solace in the anonymity, the way he could lose himself in the crowd, unnoticed, unremarkable. As he walked, his thoughts turned back to the home they had shared, the life they had built. He remembered their small rituals, the Sunday afternoon hikes, the evening walks to the corner cafe, the countless hours spent curled up on the couch, wrapped in the comfort of each other's presence. They had crafted a world together, a universe made up of small, shared moments, and in those years, he had believed that universe was unbreakable. But, like all things fragile, it had cracked under the weight of time and unspoken burdens. The arguments, when they had come, had been quiet, restrained, never a fight, but more like a steady, silent erosion of the foundation they had laid. There had been no final explosion, no dramatic farewell. Instead, it had been like watching something slip through his fingers, unable to grasp it, no matter how hard he tried. He stopped at a small park bench, its wooden slats weathered and worn. It was the very same bench where he and Amelia had sat on the night they had decided to separate. He remembered the soft rain that had fallen, the way the mist had clung to the air, enveloping them in a cocoon of silence. They had sat side by side, their shoulders touching, yet both worlds apart. The words they had exchanged then were quiet, simple, and when she had walked away, he had felt an emptiness settle within him, a hollow space that, even now, seemed to echo with her absence. Sitting on that same bench now, Elijah traced his fingers over the worn wood, feeling the grooves and imperfections under his fingertips. He wondered if it was possible to mend something that had unraveled so completely, to weave back together the threads of a life that had come undone. But the path forward was unclear, hidden behind the fog of memory and regret. He thought of all the missed opportunities, the things left unsaid, the ways they had both faltered in the face of life's small but relentless demands. As the afternoon light faded into dusk, Elijah remained on the bench, watching as the city lights flickered to life around him. In the growing darkness, he felt a strange sense of comfort, as though the night itself offered a shield from the past. And yet, even in this quiet moment, he could feel the weight of all that had been lost pressing down on him, grounding him in a reality he could not escape. For all his attempts to move forward, to rebuild a life without her, he was still haunted by the spaces she had left behind. His apartment, empty as it was, still felt like it bore her imprint, a ghostly presence that lingered in every corner, every shadow. He had tried to fill the silence with work, with hobbies, with distractions, yet nothing seemed to reach the core of that hollow space within him. The weight of it was both familiar and oppressive, a constant reminder of the life he had left behind. As he rose from the bench and made his way back through the city streets, Elijah felt the quiet stirrings of something deep within him, a longing, perhaps, or simply a need to make sense of the fragments of his life. He did not know what the future held, nor if he would ever truly escape the shadows of what once was. But for now, as he walked through the quiet, empty spaces of his life, he found himself wondering if, one day, he might find a way to fill them again, not with memories of the past, but with something new, something real. And as he climbed the stairs to his apartment, unlocking the door to his quiet, empty sanctuary, he felt the faintest flicker of hope, a small, barely discernible light in the darkness, a reminder that perhaps, just perhaps, life still held something yet unseen, something waiting to be found. In the stillness of the evening, he closed the door behind him, and for the first time in a long while, the weight of empty spaces felt just a little bit lighter. Chapter 3. Underneath the Surface. Amelia had always thought of herself as someone who could let go. She prided herself on resilience, her ability to adapt and move forward no matter the challenge. And yet, 2 years after they had gone their separate ways, she felt as though she were caught in a silent tide, unable to drift far enough from the shore of her memories with Elijah. The autumn air was thick with the scent of damp leaves, a fragrance that reminded her of simpler days, of golden afternoons spent hiking through the woods with Elijah by her side. She had thought that time and distance would dull those memories, make them less sharp, easier to bear. But they remained vivid, deeply etched into her heart, like the burn of a freshly healed scar, tender yet strangely comforting. As she walked along the path at the edge of the city park, Amelia allowed herself to remember those days. She could almost feel the crunch of leaves underfoot, the warmth of Elijah's hand wrapped around hers, the shared silence that had once been a source of comfort rather than sorrow. There had been a lightness to their connection then, an unspoken understanding that didn't require words. It was only now, with the passage of time, that she realized how precious that unspoken bond had been. But beneath the surface of those beautiful memories lay a darker, more complex reality, a tapestry woven with threads of misunderstandings, unvoiced fears, and the slow erosion of trust. She had clung to the idea that love alone could sustain them, that their history and shared dreams would be enough to overcome any challenge. Yet life had a way of fraying the edges, and in the end, their love had been no match for the quiet struggles that had slowly overtaken them. Amelia reached a small wooden bridge that spanned a shallow stream, its waters flowing gently over smooth stones. She paused, leaning against the railing, and looked down at her reflection. The face that stared back at her was familiar, yet different. There was a weariness in her eyes now, a shadow that hadn't been there before. It was a reminder of the time that had passed, of the life she had lived, and the pain she had endured. She thought about all the moments she had spent alone since they parted, the nights filled with restless thoughts and questions she could never quite answer. Had they been too young, too naive to understand the complexities of love? Had they asked too much of each other, expecting perfection when they were both only human? The questions lingered, unanswered, a weight she carried with her even now. As the leaves fell softly around her, Amelia felt a sudden urge to let go, to release the hold she had on the past. But letting go, she realized, was not as simple as she had once believed. It was not a single act, a moment of release. It was a journey, a slow, painful unraveling of the bonds that had once held her so tightly to another person. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the crisp autumn air fill her lungs. She imagined, just for a moment, what it would feel like to be free of these memories, to live a life untouched by the echoes of what once was. It was a tantalizing thought, a vision of a future where her heart was light, unburdened by the weight of loss and regret. But the past had a way of clinging, of seeping into the very fabric of who she was. And as she stood on that bridge, suspended between the present and the past, Amelia knew that she could no more erase those memories than she could erase her own reflection. They were a part of her, woven into her soul, shaping her in ways she was only beginning to understand. That night, back in her small apartment, Amelia found herself drawn to the box she had tucked away in the corner of her closet. It was a simple cardboard box, worn at the edges, filled with fragments of her life with Elijah. Old photos, postcards from trips they had taken, small mementos that held meaning only to her. She hadn't opened it in years, had almost forgotten it was there. But now, with the weight of the day pressing down on her, she felt an undeniable pull to confront what lay inside. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, she carefully lifted the lid, bracing herself for the flood of memories that would surely follow. The first item she pulled out was a photograph, slightly faded, taken on their first trip to the coast. They were standing on a cliff's edge, the ocean stretching out behind them, a vast expanse of blue that seemed to go on forever. They were both laughing, their faces lit with the unguarded joy of that moment. She could almost feel the wind against her face, hear the crash of waves below, and for a moment, she was there again, reliving the happiness she had once known. But there was a sharpness to the memory, a bittersweet edge that reminded her of all that had come after. The laughter, the love, the shared dreams. They had all been real, and yet they had not been enough. She placed the photo back in the box, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with a strange sense of acceptance. As she continued to sift through the contents of the box, she found other tokens of their life together. A pressed flower from the first bouquet he had given her, a ticket stub from a concert they had attended, a small seashell he had picked up for her on one of their walks along the beach. Each item was a fragment of a story, a piece of a life that had once felt whole. But as she held each item in her hands, she realized that these were no longer symbols of what she had lost. They were reminders of what she had once experienced, the love she had known, the happiness she had felt. And though that chapter of her life was over, its impact remained, shaping her into the person she was now, a person who had loved deeply and who had been loved in return. In the quiet of her apartment, Amelia carefully placed each item back in the box, closing the lid with a sense of finality. She would not throw them away, would not erase the memories they held, but she would carry them differently now, not as a weight, but as a testament to the life she had lived, the love she had known, and the person she had become. As she climbed into bed that night, Amelia felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The memories would always be there, lingering beneath the surface, but they no longer held the same power over her. She had faced them, acknowledged them, and in doing so, had freed herself in a way she had never thought possible. Outside her window, the city lights flickered in the darkness, casting a soft glow over her room. And as she drifted off to sleep, Amelia felt the faint stirrings of something new, a quiet, unspoken hope that perhaps, in time, she would find her way forward, not away from her memories, but toward a life that could hold them alongside whatever awaited her on the horizon. Chapter 4. Familiar Faces, Unfamiliar Paths. Elijah's days blended into a predictable routine, yet within that routine, he found himself haunted by small reminders, the echoes of unfinished moments he had shared with Amelia. These memories surfaced unbidden, slipping into his thoughts like a current beneath still waters, tugging him back to a time when life felt simpler, more whole. One evening, Elijah decided to go for a run through the winding trails at the edge of the city. Running had once been his way of clearing his mind, a ritual he had adopted in college, long before he had met Amelia. But even now, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow running in circles, unable to escape the thoughts that weighed him down. The air was cool as he began to jog, his steps steady and rhythmic against the gravel path. Autumn had arrived in full, and the trees along the trail were painted in warm shades of orange and gold. The leaves crunched beneath his feet, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel as though he was shedding something old, leaving behind the remnants of a life he no longer inhabited. But as he ran, his mind wandered back to those weekend mornings when he and Amelia would wake early, slipping on their shoes and lacing up side by side before setting off on a run together. They had often moved in silence, both focused on the steady rhythm of their steps, yet there had been a unity to those quiet mornings, an unspoken connection that had needed no words. The trail curved along a small creek, the water flowing with a quiet persistence, its surface catching the light as it trickled over smooth stones. Elijah slowed, coming to a stop beside the water, watching the gentle current as it wound its way downstream. He could almost hear her voice in his mind, recalling the times she had lingered beside this same creek, captivated by its soft murmur, as if the water spoke a language only she could understand. Standing there, Elijah felt a sense of longing that he hadn't anticipated, a yearning not just for Amelia herself, but for the life they had shared, the moments that had seemed insignificant at the time but now felt like precious fragments of something he could never quite recreate. He wondered if she ever thought of those mornings, of the quiet rhythm they had once shared. It was strange, he thought, how something as simple as a shared silence could become so profound in the absence of the one who had made it meaningful. He resumed his run, pushing himself harder, his steps quickening as though he could outrun the memories that clung to him. But as he returned home, breathless and covered in a thin sheen of sweat, he felt no sense of relief. The memories had followed him, clinging like shadows, refusing to be left behind. In the solitude of his apartment, Elijah stood in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him with an intensity he barely recognized. His life felt like an empty space, a hollow shell that held remnants of what once had been, but nothing of what was. He wondered if he would ever find a way to fill that space, to build a life that felt real and whole without her. Meanwhile, miles away, Amelia found herself experiencing a similar sense of incompleteness. She had started taking a photography class at a local studio, hoping to immerse herself in something new, something that might help her find her footing again. Photography had been a casual hobby of hers for years, but she had never pursued it seriously. Now, with a camera in hand, she wandered through the city, capturing moments of life unfolding around her. Strangers laughing at cafe tables, children chasing each other in the park, the soft glow of streetlights against the evening sky. But no matter where she pointed her lens, her mind always drifted back to Elijah. She found herself wondering what he would think of her photos, if he would see the same beauty in the small, fleeting moments she captured. She could almost hear his voice in her mind, offering gentle encouragement, sharing in her joy as she framed each shot. It was strange, she thought, how his presence lingered even in his absence, as though he was still with her, guiding her hand, sharing in her quiet discoveries. One evening, Amelia found herself at the edge of the river that ran through the heart of the city. The water was calm, reflecting the soft light of the setting sun, casting a warm glow over the scene. She lifted her camera, framing the riverbank, the buildings in the distance, the way the light danced across the water. But as she looked through the lens, she felt a pang of sadness, a reminder of the evenings she had once spent with Elijah by her side, watching the sun dip below the horizon. They had shared so many sunsets together, each one a quiet moment of peace, an unspoken promise that whatever life held, they would face it together. And now, as she stood alone, capturing the beauty of the fading light, she realized that those promises, once so real, now felt like fragments of a dream she could no longer return to, no matter how much she wanted to. Later that night, as she sat alone in her apartment, reviewing the photos she had taken, Amelia felt the weight of that emptiness pressing down on her. The images on her screen were beautiful, capturing the essence of the city she had come to love. Yet they felt hollow, incomplete. She could see the artistry in each shot, the way the light and shadows danced across the frame, but there was something missing, a depth that she couldn't quite reach. And as she stared at the photos, she realized that the missing piece was not something she could capture with a camera. It was a part of herself, a part that had been left behind with Elijah, in the life they had shared and the memories they had made. In the weeks that followed, both Elijah and Amelia continued to navigate their separate lives, each struggling to fill the void left by the other. They threw themselves into their routines, their hobbies, their work, yet no matter how busy they became, the echoes of those unfinished moments lingered, whispering in the quiet spaces of their days. They had both convinced themselves that they could move forward, that they could find a way to live without each other. But as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, they each came to realize that some parts of themselves were still intertwined. woven together in ways they could not untangle. The memories they shared, the dreams they had once held, the promises they had made. These things were not so easily left behind. And so, they continued on, each carrying the weight of those unfinished moments, the echoes of a love that had once been whole, but now existed only in fragments, scattered like pieces of a puzzle that would never quite fit together again. In their separate worlds, both Elijah and Amelia wondered if they would ever find a way to fill the spaces that the other had left behind. And though they were miles apart, though their lives had diverged in ways they could never have anticipated, they each held onto a quiet, unspoken hope that perhaps, someday, they would find a way to reconcile the past with the present, to make peace with the memories that lingered beneath the surface. But for now, they continued to carry those echoes, the weight of all that was left unfinished, each step forward a testament to the life they had shared, and the life they were still searching for, somewhere beyond the horizon. Chapter 5. When Paths Cross Unseen. As the weeks passed, Amelia and Elijah settled into routines that unknowingly began to mirror each other's lives, their paths drifting closer in ways neither could see. They had both moved on, or so they told themselves, and yet, invisible threads seemed to tug them back into a shared orbit, creating moments of near encounters in the spaces they now inhabited separately. Amelia had developed a new ritual. Every Saturday, she would wake up early and stroll through the farmer's market in the heart of the city. She liked the bustle of the vendors setting up their stalls, the aroma of freshly baked bread and roasted coffee mingling in the cool morning air. She wandered through rows of fresh produce, inspecting colorful vegetables, inhaling the sweet scent of ripe berries. It was a simple joy, a ritual that helped her feel grounded, connected to the pulse of the city. This particular Saturday morning, Amelia lingered at a flower stall, her eyes drawn to a bouquet of sunflowers, their yellow petals bright and warm against the muted autumn tones around them. She reached out to touch one, feeling the softness of the petals under her fingers, and for a moment, a memory surfaced, Elijah, surprising her with a single sunflower during their first autumn together. He had handed it to her with a shy smile, explaining that he couldn't resist its brightness, how it reminded him of her own spirit. The memory caught her off guard, filling her with a bittersweet ache that she quickly tried to push away. Unbeknownst to her, Elijah was just a few streets away, his own Saturday morning ritual unfolding with the same quiet intent. He had recently taken up sketching, something he hadn't done in years. It was an old hobby, something he had once shared with Amelia, though it had been left abandoned in the aftermath of their parting. Now, armed with a small sketchpad and a set of pencils, he found himself drawn to the city's quiet corners, capturing scenes of everyday life in quick, fluid lines. He liked to sit on benches in hidden courtyards or at the edges of parks, sketching the people who passed by, the way the light fell across buildings, the movement of leaves in the autumn breeze. This Saturday, he found himself at a small cafe overlooking the market square, his sketchpad open on the table in front of him. He sipped his coffee slowly, letting the warmth of the mug seep into his hands, and watched as people drifted from stall to stall, their voices a soft hum in the background. His pencil moved almost unconsciously, capturing the shapes and shadows, the energy of the crowd, as if he could find some deeper meaning in the lines and curves he drew. As he looked up, his gaze wandered over the market, taking in the vibrant colors of the stalls, the blur of motion as people moved through the space. His eyes drifted to the flower stall where Amelia had stood just moments before, though he was too late to see her. Instead, he saw only the bright splash of yellow sunflowers, a color that stirred something deep within him, a faint tug at the edges of a memory he couldn't quite place. He shook it off, focusing again on his sketchpad, unaware of how close he had come to seeing her. The morning continued in this way, each of them moving through the same spaces, touching on the same memories, yet remaining invisible to each other. It was as though the city itself was conspiring to bring them together, arranging these near encounters as if to remind them of all they had shared, all that still lingered between them. Later, Amelia found herself in a small bookstore nestled in a quiet alley. It was a place she had discovered only recently, filled with shelves that reached the ceiling, each one overflowing with books of every kind. She liked the way it smelled, like paper and old wood, with a faint hint of lavender from a candle flickering on the counter. She wandered the aisles aimlessly, running her fingers along the spines of books, savoring the quiet solitude of the space. She picked up a book at random, flipping through its pages, her mind only half engaged as she skimmed the words. But as she read, a passage caught her attention, a description of a love that had ended too soon, a relationship fractured by silence and misunderstandings, yet still haunting the characters long after they had parted. The words seemed to reach out to her, touching something raw and vulnerable within her, and she felt her heart tighten with a familiar ache. Meanwhile, Elijah had ventured into the same bookstore an hour earlier, his own Saturday ritual bringing him here like clockwork. He had a favorite section near the back, filled with poetry and essays, words that spoke to the quieter parts of himself. He browsed the shelves slowly, his fingers trailing over the worn covers, and selected a book of poems that had been hidden behind a stack of newer titles. The poems within were soft, meditative, exploring the nuances of love and loss, the small moments that lingered in the heart long after the people who had shared them were gone. As he read, Elijah felt the weight of his memories settle over him, unbidden yet undeniable. He was struck by how much of his life had been shaped by those small, quiet moments with Amelia. The way her laughter had filled the spaces between words, the gentle touch of her hand resting in his, the silent understanding that had needed no explanation. He closed the book, his heart heavy with the realization that, despite all his efforts to move forward, a part of him remained bound to her, held by the echoes of a love that had been, but was no more. That evening, back in their respective apartments, both Elijah and Amelia found themselves reaching for small comforts, seeking solace in familiar routines. Amelia brewed a pot of tea, her fingers tracing the edge of her favorite mug as she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky. She felt a sense of loneliness settle over her, a quiet ache that she couldn't shake, as though a piece of herself were missing, drifting somewhere beyond her reach. Elijah, too, found himself drawn to the window, his gaze fixed on the darkened city, lost in thought. He wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she ever thought of him in these quiet moments, as he so often thought of her. The question lingered, unanswered, a whisper in the silence that filled his apartment. And so, as the city slept, they remained connected in ways they could not see, their lives touching on each other's without ever quite meeting, like parallel lines stretching toward an uncertain future. They were separate, yet bound by the invisible threads of memory and longing, each carrying the weight of their shared past, each seeking a way forward, yet somehow always circling back to each other in the quiet spaces of their days. In the darkness of the night, they each lay awake, their thoughts drifting through the fragments of their lives, wondering if they would ever truly be free of each other, or if some part of their hearts would forever remain intertwined, bound by the echoes of unfinished moments, the remnants of a love that had left its mark in ways neither could fully comprehend. Chapter 6: A Heart's Second Glance. In the quiet spaces of their lives, Elijah and Amelia found themselves drawn back into memories of their shared past, each reflection offering glimpses of moments that now seemed distant, almost unreal. They had loved each other deeply, yet their love had been fragile, woven together with threads that had slowly unraveled, leaving only faint impressions on their hearts. Now, as they navigated lives apart, these memories surfaced in unexpected ways, each one a fragment of a life that had once felt whole. For Elijah, the memories often appeared in the early hours of the morning, when the world was still cloaked in darkness. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on him, as memories of Amelia drifted through his mind like waves on a quiet shore. He remembered their first road trip together, a spontaneous decision to escape the city for a weekend. They had driven for hours, talking about everything and nothing, their laughter filling the car as they sped down winding roads. He could still recall the way she had leaned out the window, her hair whipping in the wind, her face alight with joy as they raced through the open countryside. That weekend had been a turning point for them, a moment when they had both felt the undeniable pull of something deeper, something that went beyond the fleeting nature of infatuation. They had shared their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future, and in that vulnerability, they had found a sense of belonging that felt almost sacred. Yet now, as he lay alone in the darkness, those memories felt like fragments of a dream, a life that no longer belonged to him. Elijah's mind drifted to the quieter moments they had shared, the nights spent curled up on the couch, wrapped in each other's warmth as they watched old movies, content in the simplicity of each other's presence. He remembered how Amelia would rest her head on his shoulder, her fingers tracing gentle patterns on his hand, a silent affirmation of her love. Those moments had been small, almost insignificant, yet they had held a depth that he now realized had been the foundation of their relationship. It was in those quiet exchanges that he had felt most alive, most connected, as though they were two souls intertwined, bound by an unspoken understanding. But even in the beauty of those memories, there were shadows. Elijah couldn't ignore the moments when cracks had begun to appear, subtle yet undeniable. He remembered the arguments, the misunderstandings, the silences that had stretched between them like an invisible wall. There had been times when he had felt helpless, unable to bridge the growing distance between them, as though they were speaking different languages, each one lost in their own world of pain and longing. He wondered now if he had ever truly understood her, or if he had simply been in love with the idea of who he wanted her to be. Miles away, Amelia was experiencing her own journey through their shared past. She often found herself drawn to her journals, the pages filled with her thoughts, her hopes, her doubts. She had always been a writer at heart, finding solace in the act of putting her emotions into words, and her journals had become a sanctuary, a place where she could lay bare the truths she had often kept hidden, even from herself. Now, as she flipped through the pages, she felt a strange sense of detachment, as though she were reading the words of a stranger. She lingered on a passage she had written during one of their happier times, her words filled with a quiet joy, a sense of contentment that she had once believed would last forever. She had written about their shared dreams, their plans for the future, the way they had seemed to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. She had felt safe with him, secure in the knowledge that they would face whatever challenges came their way. Yet now, reading those words, she felt a pang of sadness, a reminder of how much had changed, how their love had shifted from something bright and hopeful to something that had ultimately left them both wounded. Amelia's thoughts drifted to the moments when she had felt alone, even in his presence. She remembered the times when she had tried to reach out, to express her fears and insecurities, only to be met with silence, a distance that had left her feeling adrift. There had been nights when she had lain awake beside him, her heart heavy with unspoken words, wondering if he truly saw her, if he understood the depth of her love, or if he was simply lost in his own world, unable to connect in the way she so desperately needed. As she sat in the dim light of her apartment, the weight of those memories pressed down on her, filling her with a sense of loss that went beyond the end of their relationship. It was a loss of the life they had built together, the dreams they had once shared, the sense of purpose that had come from being part of something greater than herself. She realized now that she had invested so much of herself in their relationship, that when it had ended, she had been left with an emptiness she hadn't known how to fill. Elijah and Amelia continued to carry these memories, each reflection a piece of a puzzle they could not fully grasp. They had both believed that time would heal their wounds, that they could move forward and find happiness on their own. Yet as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, they each came to realize that some part of themselves was still tethered to the past, bound by the memories that lingered like shadows in the corners of their minds. They tried to distract themselves, filling their days with routines, with new hobbies, with fleeting moments of joy. But no matter how hard they tried, the past remained, a constant presence that refused to be ignored. It was as though their lives had become reflections of each other, each one carrying a piece of the other's heart, yet unable to fully let go. As they looked back on the moments they had shared, they began to see the truth in ways they had never been able to before. They had loved each other deeply, yet their love had been imperfect, shaped by their own insecurities, their own fears. They had both made mistakes, both allowed their own doubts to cloud the beauty of what they had built together. And now, as they looked back, they could see the ways in which they had hurt each other, the ways in which they had failed to truly connect, despite their best efforts. In their separate lives, Elijah and Amelia found themselves at a crossroads, each one grappling with the weight of their past, the memories that held them captive. They knew they couldn't continue living like this, caught between the life they had shared and the future that awaited them. Yet neither knew how to move forward, how to let go of the love that had once been their anchor. And so, they continued to reflect, each memory a piece of a story that had yet to reach its conclusion. They were like two souls adrift, bound by a love that had shaped them in ways they could not fully understand, yet unable to find their way back to each other. The echoes of their past lingered, a constant reminder of what had been and what might still be, if only they could find the courage to confront the truth of their hearts. In the quiet solitude of their lives, Elijah and Amelia each felt a stirring, a faint glimmer of hope that perhaps, somehow, they could find a way to make peace with their past. They didn't know what the future held, or if they would ever truly be free of each other. But as they looked back on the life they had shared, they began to sense that their story was not yet over, that somewhere, beyond the shadows of their memories, a new beginning awaited, if only they could find the strength to reach for it. Chapter 7. The Roads We Crossed Alone. Time had moved on, yet for Amelia and Elijah, there was a feeling that they had remained caught somewhere between the past and the present, tangled in a web of memories and emotions that refused to fade. The world around them carried on in its familiar rhythm. Workdays passed, seasons changed, and people came and went. But inside, they each felt the weight of something unfinished, a lingering echo of a life that once felt boundless and whole. For Amelia, this feeling would surface unexpectedly, like a wave rising out of still waters. She found herself standing by her apartment window one evening, watching as dusk settled over the city, casting a gentle glow over the buildings and streets. The faint hum of life outside created a contrast to the quiet inside her apartment, a silence that felt almost oppressive. She watched as lights flickered on in neighboring windows, each one a glimpse into a world she could never fully understand. Yet in that moment, she felt acutely aware of her own solitude, of the emptiness that had taken residence within her ever since Elijah had gone. It was strange, she thought, how someone could still feel so present even when they were gone. She had tried so hard to move forward, to fill her life with new routines, new experiences. But there were moments, brief yet powerful, when she felt his presence as though he were still beside her, a silent companion in the quiet spaces of her days. She remembered the nights they had spent watching the city lights together, their hands intertwined, both of them lost in the simple pleasure of being close. She had always felt safe with him, protected in a way that went beyond mere physical presence. Now, without him, she felt as though she were standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, her footing unsteady, her heart weighed down by the ache of all she had lost. Meanwhile, Elijah was experiencing his own moments of introspection. He had always been someone who kept his emotions carefully guarded, who believed in moving forward without looking back. Yet now, as he sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the silence of his own thoughts, he found himself unable to escape the memories that seemed to follow him wherever he went. They were like shadows, subtle yet persistent, reminding him of the life he had left behind. He remembered the small rituals they had shared, the routines that had woven their lives together in a way that had felt comforting and familiar. He thought of the mornings they had spent sharing coffee in the quiet of their kitchen, the way she would lean against the counter, her hair still tousled from sleep, a soft smile on her lips as she listened to him talk about his plans for the day. He had taken those moments for granted, believing that they would always be there, that their love was something unbreakable. But now, looking back, he realized how fragile it had all been, how easily it had slipped away, leaving him with only memories and regrets. Elijah tried to distract himself with work, throwing himself into projects that demanded his full attention. But even in the midst of his busiest days, he would catch himself thinking of her, his mind drifting back to the life they had shared. It was as though a part of him was still tethered to her, held by the invisible threads of love and longing that had refused to fade. He wondered if she ever thought of him, if she felt the same pull, the same sense of incompleteness that haunted him. The thought filled him with a mixture of hope and sorrow, a reminder of all that had been lost and all that might still be possible. On a rare day off, Elijah decided to take a walk through the city, hoping that the change of scenery might help clear his mind. He wandered through familiar streets, each one filled with memories of the times he and Amelia had spent together. As he passed by a small park, he felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering the lazy afternoons they had spent lying on the grass, watching the clouds drift by. It had been one of their favorite places, a quiet retreat in the midst of the city, a place where they could escape from the noise and distractions of their lives. He sat on a bench, feeling the cool breeze brush against his face, and closed his eyes, letting the sounds of the city wash over him. In that moment, he felt a deep sense of longing, a yearning for the life they had once shared, the love that had once felt so certain. He wondered if he would ever feel that way again, if he would ever find a connection as deep and meaningful as the one he had lost. The thought filled him with a quiet sadness, a reminder of all that he had left behind, all that he had given up. Miles away, Amelia was experiencing her own journey through the past. She had taken to writing again, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the pages of her journal, hoping to make sense of the emotions that had been swirling within her since their separation. She wrote about the love they had shared, the dreams they had once held close, the life they had built together. She wrote about the pain of their parting, the emptiness that had settled in her heart, the sense of loss that had become a constant companion. As she wrote, she felt a sense of clarity begin to emerge, a deeper understanding of the love they had shared and the reasons it had unraveled. She realized that they had both been searching for something, some sense of purpose, of belonging, that they had been unable to find within themselves. They had turned to each other for comfort, for validation, for a sense of completeness. But in doing so, they had lost sight of themselves, becoming entwined in a way that had ultimately led to their undoing. Amelia's reflections brought her a sense of peace, a feeling that perhaps, in time, she could find a way to let go, to move forward without the weight of the past holding her back. Yet even as she came to this realization, she knew that a part of her would always carry the memories of their time together, the echoes of a love that had shaped her in ways she could not fully understand. She wondered if she would ever see him again, if they would ever have the chance to truly say goodbye, to find closure in a way that would allow them both to heal. As the days turned to weeks, Amelia and Elijah continued to live their separate lives, each one carrying the memories of their shared past, each one haunted by the lingering echoes of a love that had once been everything. They had both changed in the months since their separation, grown in ways they could not have anticipated. Yet they remained bound by the invisible threads that connected them, the shared history that had left its mark on their hearts. And so, they continued to move forward, each step bringing them closer to an unknown future, yet always drawn back to the past, to the life they had once shared. They were like two souls adrift, bound by the memories that lingered in the quiet spaces of their lives, each one seeking a way to make peace with the love that had been and the life that had yet to come. In the silence of their separate worlds, Amelia and Elijah each felt a faint glimmer of hope, a sense that perhaps, in time, they could find a way to heal, to move forward without the weight of the past holding them back. They didn't know what the future held, or if they would ever truly be free of each other. But as they looked back on the life they had shared, they began to sense that their story was not yet over, that somewhere, beyond the echoes of their past, a new beginning awaited, if only they could find the courage to reach for it. Chapter 8: Threads of Forgotten Promises. In the stillness of the night, dreams took hold of Amelia's mind, transporting her back to moments she thought she'd left behind. It started innocently enough, a distant memory, a faint echo of laughter, a sense of warmth and comfort. But as the dream deepened, it transformed into something more vivid, more tangible, as if she were reliving the memories themselves. She could feel the weight of Elijah's arm around her shoulders, the familiar scent of his cologne, the quiet intimacy that had once defined their love. In these dreams, they were still together, two hearts intertwined, their laughter filling the empty spaces of their lives. She could see the twinkle in his eyes as he looked at her, a silent promise of loyalty and love. They were happy, content, as though the troubles that had torn them apart had never existed. She would reach out to touch him, to feel the warmth of his hand in hers, only for him to slip away, leaving her grasping at empty air. And then she would wake, the remnants of the dream lingering in her mind, filling her with a bittersweet longing that clung to her even as daylight crept through her window. These dreams haunted her, seeping into her days in ways she could not fully understand. She found herself carrying an ache in her chest, a feeling of loss that seemed to grow with each passing day. She tried to dismiss it, to remind herself that the life they had shared was over, that she had chosen a new path, a new life. But no matter how hard she tried, the dreams continued to return, drawing her back to a past she could not escape. As days turned into weeks, Amelia found herself becoming more introspective, reflecting on the choices she had made, the life she had built since their separation. She had thought she was moving forward, creating a future that was hers alone. But now, with each dream, she felt a nagging doubt, a question that she could not ignore. Had she truly left him behind, or was he still a part of her, woven into the fabric of her soul? Miles away, Elijah was experiencing his own struggles with reality and memory. He, too, found himself haunted by dreams, by fragments of a past that had once been his everything. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world was shrouded in darkness, he would close his eyes and find himself transported back to moments of happiness, moments of peace, moments when he had felt truly whole. In his dreams, he and Amelia were together again, their laughter mingling in the air, their eyes locked in a shared understanding that needed no words. He could feel her warmth beside him, the gentle touch of her hand against his, the way her head would rest on his shoulder as they watched the world go by. He would look at her, and in her eyes, he would see a future filled with love, a life they had once dreamed of together, But just as he would reach for her, just as he would feel the warmth of her hand in his, she would vanish, leaving him alone in the darkness, his heart aching with the weight of all he had lost. He would wake, the emptiness pressing down on him, a reminder of the life he had once known and the choices that had led him to where he was now. Elijah tried to push these dreams aside, to remind himself that the past was gone, that he had chosen a different path. He threw himself into his work, into new routines, hoping that the busyness would keep the memories at bay. But no matter how hard he tried, the dreams continued to haunt him, drawing him back to a past that seemed to cling to him, a love that refused to let go. In the days that followed, both Amelia and Elijah found themselves struggling to reconcile the life they had known with the life they were living. They were like two souls caught between worlds, tethered to memories that refused to fade, yet trying to move forward into a future that felt uncertain and unfamiliar. For Amelia, this sense of being caught between dreams and reality became a constant presence, coloring her perception of the world around her. She would walk through the city, past familiar places they had once visited together, and feel a sense of nostalgia that bordered on pain. She would see couples holding hands, sharing quiet moments of laughter, and feel a pang of longing, a reminder of the life she had once shared with Elijah. She began to question her choices, to wonder if she had made a mistake in letting him go. She had told herself that their love had become too complicated, too burdened by their own insecurities and doubts. But now, as she looked back, she wondered if they had given up too easily, if they had allowed their fears to drive them apart. The thought filled her with a quiet sadness, a sense of loss that seemed to settle deep within her, a constant reminder of all that had been and all that could have been. Meanwhile, Elijah found himself similarly haunted by memories, by the life he had once known and the dreams they had shared. He would go about his days, trying to focus on the present, yet finding himself drawn back to moments of the past, memories that seemed to surface at the most unexpected times. He would see a couple walking hand in hand, a glimmer of love in their eyes, and feel a pang of longing, a reminder of the connection he had once felt with Amelia. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world was still, he would sit alone, his mind filled with thoughts of her, of the life they had shared, the love that had once been his anchor. He would close his eyes and feel her presence beside him, a silent companion in the darkness, a reminder of all he had lost and all he still carried within him. As the days passed, Amelia and Elijah each felt a growing sense of restlessness, a feeling that their lives were somehow incomplete, that they were missing something essential. They both tried to move forward, to focus on the life they had chosen, yet the pull of the past remained, a constant presence that refused to be ignored. They were like two souls drifting in parallel, each one caught between dreams and reality, between the life they had known and the life they were living. They both felt a yearning, a longing that went beyond words, a sense that there was something unfinished between them, a story that had yet to reach its conclusion. In their separate lives, Amelia and Elijah each began to wonder if perhaps, somehow, their paths were meant to cross again. They didn't know what the future held, or if they would ever truly find closure. But as they navigated the delicate balance between dreams and reality, they each felt a faint glimmer of hope, a sense that perhaps, somewhere in the vastness of their lives, there was a chance for a new beginning. And so, they continued to live their separate lives, each one carrying the memories of their shared past, each one haunted by the lingering echoes of a love that had once been their everything. They were like two stars caught in orbit, each one drawn to the other, yet unable to bridge the distance between them. But as they looked back on the life they had shared, they both sensed that perhaps, somewhere in the future, their paths would converge once more, giving them the chance to rewrite the story of their hearts. Chapter 9, Lost Moments Rewritten. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Amelia stood at the edge of a small dock, her heart beating in rhythm with the gentle lapping of the water against the wooden posts. It was a crisp morning, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of pine and earth, a reminder of the world waking up to new possibilities. This was her favorite spot, a secluded place by the lake where she could escape the chaos of the city and find solace in the stillness of nature. Today, however, there was an undercurrent of anticipation that made her restless. The shimmering surface of the lake seemed to beckon her, a promise of adventure, a whisper of new beginnings. She had been feeling an increasing desire to explore uncharted waters, to embrace the unknown that lay ahead of her. It was as if the lake reflected her inner turmoil, the mingling of hope and uncertainty swirling together in a beautiful, yet daunting dance. For months, she had been grappling with the ache of separation from Elijah. Every dream, every fleeting memory had left her with questions that loomed larger than life itself. She had spent so much time reflecting on their past, analyzing what had gone wrong and what could have been done differently. But now, standing here by the lake, she felt an urgent need to push past the shadows of her memories, to break free from the chains of her heart. Taking a deep breath, Amelia stepped onto the dock, her feet steady against the weathered wood. The world felt alive around her, vibrant and full of potential. She had made a promise to herself to embrace change, to take risks that would lead her to a brighter future. As she stood there, the soft breeze tugging at her hair, she closed her eyes and envisioned the life she wanted to create, one filled with laughter, love, and the thrill of discovery. In that moment of clarity, she decided to take a leap of faith. She would rent a small boat, row out into the lake, and let the water carry her to new horizons. As she secured the boat, her heart raced with excitement, the kind that came from stepping outside of her comfort zone. She imagined herself sailing across the lake, the sun on her face and the wind in her hair, free to chart her own course. Meanwhile, Elijah was navigating his own uncharted waters, albeit in a different way. The weight of the past had begun to lift, replaced by a sense of determination that had sparked within him. He had recently taken on a new project at work, one that required him to step into a leadership role for the first time. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, pushing him to confront his fears and insecurities head-on. Each morning, as he prepared for the day, he would look in the mirror and remind himself of the strength he possessed. He was no longer the same man who had allowed doubt to dictate his choices. He had learned to embrace his own potential. But despite this newfound confidence, there were still moments when he felt the familiar pang of longing for Amelia, a reminder of the love that had shaped him in ways he was still discovering. As he sat at his desk, going over project plans, he found his thoughts drifting back to her, to the warmth of her smile and the light that filled her eyes. He remembered their shared dreams, the way they had spoken about the future as if it were a canvas waiting to be painted. But now, that canvas felt blank, a stark reminder of the choices that had led them apart. Yet, something had shifted within him. He felt a stirring of hope, a belief that perhaps there was still a chance for them, even if it seemed impossible. He began to wonder if he could find the courage to reach out to her, to bridge the gap that had formed between them. The thought filled him with both excitement and trepidation, yet he could not shake the feeling that life was urging him to take a chance. As Amelia rowed out into the lake, the rhythmic strokes of the oars against the water became a meditative practice, soothing her restless heart. She marveled at the beauty surrounding her, the way the sunlight danced on the water's surface, the distant mountains framing the horizon, and the call of birds echoing through the trees. Each stroke propelled her further away from the shore, farther into the depths of her own thoughts. With every movement, she felt a sense of liberation, as if she were shedding the weight of her past. She had spent too long entangled in the memories of her relationship with Elijah, and now it was time to embrace the unknown. She allowed her mind to wander, envisioning the life she desired, filled with new adventures, new connections, and the possibility of love, whether it was with Elijah or someone entirely new. In that moment of clarity, she recognized the importance of self-discovery, of learning to love herself before seeking love from another. She felt the weight of her insecurities begin to lift, replaced by a sense of empowerment and freedom. The boat glided smoothly across the water, a reflection of her shifting heart, and as she reached the center of the lake, she paused, allowing herself to simply exist in the beauty around her. Elijah, too, found himself reflecting on the importance of self-growth as he navigated the challenges at work. With each new obstacle he faced, he learned to rely on his own instincts, to trust in his ability to lead and inspire those around him. He realized that he was no longer defined by his past mistakes or his relationship with Amelia. He was forging a new identity, one that was rooted in resilience and strength. As he prepared for a crucial presentation, he felt a sense of determination swell within him. This was his opportunity to showcase not just his skills, but his evolution as a person. He had grown, and with that growth came the understanding that he could shape his own destiny. And yet, even amidst this newfound focus, the lingering thoughts of Amelia remained, a subtle reminder of the love that had once been the cornerstone of his life. On the day of the presentation, as he stood in front of his colleagues, he felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. He spoke with passion and conviction, drawing upon the lessons he had learned through both success and failure. It was a powerful moment, one that solidified his sense of self-worth and the realization that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. But as the applause echoed in the conference room, a small part of him felt an emptiness. He wanted to share this moment with Amelia, to show her how far he had come, to invite her into the new life he was building. Yet, he knew that the decision to reach out was fraught with uncertainty. What if she had moved on? What if the spark they had shared was now extinguished, merely a fading memory? As Amelia made her way back to the shore, the sun began its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The tranquility of the lake had provided her with a sense of clarity, a reminder that life was too precious to be bound by fear or regret. She felt invigorated, ready to embrace whatever came next, even if it meant venturing into the unknown. When she stepped onto solid ground, she looked out over the water one last time, a silent promise to herself that she would continue to seek new horizons. She could no longer allow the memories of the past to dictate her present or her future. It was time to chart her own course, to embrace the opportunities that awaited her, whether they lay in new relationships or the possibility of rekindling her connection with Elijah. As both Amelia and Elijah stood at their respective crossroads, each contemplating the future, they felt the familiar tug of their shared history, the bond that still linked them despite the distance. Each step they took, each moment of reflection, brought them closer to the possibility of rediscovery. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the lake, they were both reminded that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin when you dare to set sail into uncharted waters. Chapter 10. Unseen Bridges Between Us. As autumn descended upon the city, the landscape transformed into a vibrant tapestry of gold and crimson. The air grew crisp, carrying with it the sweet scent of fallen leaves and the promise of change. Amelia found herself wandering through the local park, her footsteps crunching against the carpet of leaves that blanketed the path. This was her refuge, a place where she could momentarily escape the demands of life and immerse herself in the beauty of nature. On this particular day, the park was alive with activity. Families strolled along the paths, children laughed and played, and couples shared intimate moments beneath the trees. Amelia watched them from a distance, a soft smile gracing her lips as she felt the warmth of their joy. Yet, Beneath the surface of her happiness lingered a familiar ache, a reminder of what she had once shared with Elijah and the love that still tugged at her heart. As she walked, her mind wandered back to memories of autumns spent together. She could picture the two of them bundled in scarves, sipping hot cider as they laughed at silly jokes and shared dreams beneath the canopy of colorful leaves. It was a time when their love felt invincible, untouched by the trials that would later come to define their relationship. The contrast between those moments and her present solitude struck her deeply, sending a ripple of longing through her. Stopping by a large oak tree, Amelia rested her hand against its rough bark, grounding herself in the present while allowing her memories to wash over her. She closed her eyes, imagining Elijah's laughter ringing in her ears, feeling the comfort of his presence beside her. For a fleeting moment, it was as if he was there with her, sharing in the beauty of the season, enveloped in the warmth of their connection. But as quickly as the thought came, it dissipated, leaving her with a sense of loss that felt all too familiar. Meanwhile, across town, Elijah was grappling with his own reflections, standing in the middle of a bustling coffee shop. He had come to grab a quick drink before diving into a busy workday, but as he waited in line, he was struck by the atmosphere around him. A vibrant mix of laughter, conversation, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on a couple seated by the window, their fingers intertwined as they whispered sweet nothings to each other. The sight sent a sharp pang through his chest, and he couldn't help but think of Amelia. Images of their time together flooded his mind. The late-night conversations, the spontaneous adventures, the quiet moments spent simply enjoying each other's company. He could almost hear her laughter, bright and contagious, a sound that had once filled his life with joy. It had been months since they had parted ways, but the memories lingered, echoing in his heart like a haunting melody that refused to fade. As he took his drink from the barista, he found himself contemplating the possibility of reaching out to her. Could he muster the courage to bridge the gap that had formed between them? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. After all, what if the spark they once shared had extinguished in the time apart? What if she had moved on, leaving him to grapple with the remnants of their past alone? Elijah took a sip of his coffee, the warmth spreading through him as he continued to reflect on the changes he had made in his life. He had embraced his new role at work, pouring his energy into projects that challenged him, pushing him to grow as a person. But amidst the success and newfound confidence, there remained an undeniable void, one that could only be filled by Amelia's presence. He felt the weight of his heartache pressing down on him, urging him to take a chance on love once more. With each passing day, he became increasingly aware that the memories he held dear were not just echoes of the past, but rather fragments of a future that was still within reach. The realization washed over him like a gentle wave, igniting a flicker of hope deep within his heart. Perhaps the love he and Amelia had shared was not meant to be buried beneath the weight of regret. Instead, it could be the foundation for a new beginning, a chance to explore the depths of their connection once more. As Amelia strolled through the park, she felt a stirring within her, an undeniable urge to reclaim her happiness. The warmth of the sun on her skin and the beauty of the autumn leaves reminded her that life was fleeting, that moments of joy could be found even amidst heartache. She took a deep breath, allowing the fresh air to fill her lungs, filling her with a sense of clarity. Determined to embrace change, she began to envision the next steps of her journey. She thought about her aspirations, the dreams she had put on hold during her relationship with Elijah, and the passions she had yet to explore. It was time to redefine herself, to embrace the fullness of her identity beyond the confines of their love. Yet, a part of her still yearned for the connection they had shared, the deep bond that had once fueled her spirit. Just then, as she rounded a corner, Amelia's eyes caught sight of a small gallery showcasing local artists. It had been years since she had indulged her creative side, years since she had allowed herself to paint, to express her emotions through art. The sight of the gallery stirred something deep within her, a call to return to a part of herself she had almost forgotten. She felt an urge to step inside, to immerse herself in the creativity and inspiration that surrounded her. Perhaps art would help her process her feelings, a medium through which she could navigate the complexities of her heart. With newfound resolve, she entered the gallery, the warmth of the space wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. As she walked through the exhibits, she felt a sense of wonder and possibility. Each piece told a story, each brushstroke a glimpse into the artist's soul. She marveled at the beauty of expression, the way art could convey emotions that words often fail to capture. She could feel her own creativity bubbling to the surface, urging her to pick up a brush once more. Across town, Elijah returned home after a long day at work, the weight of his thoughts heavy on his shoulders. He sat at his kitchen table, the glow of the overhead light casting soft shadows across the room. He couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was calling him to take action, to confront the feelings he had kept buried for too long. He opened his laptop, intending to dive into emails, but instead found himself staring blankly at the screen. In that moment of stillness, he felt an overwhelming desire to reach out to Amelia, to share his thoughts, his feelings, to let her know that she still occupied a place in his heart. The hesitation that had held him back for months began to melt away, replaced by a sense of urgency. With a deep breath, he began typing, pouring his heart into a message that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. He wrote of his reflections, of the memories that still brought him joy, and the hope that they could reconnect. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt that the time had come to take a leap of faith, to embrace the unknown with open arms. Meanwhile, Amelia stood in front of a blank canvas at the gallery, the colors of autumn swirling in her mind. With each stroke of the brush, she let her emotions flow freely, allowing her heart to guide her movements. She painted not just what she saw, but what she felt, the longing, the hope, the bittersweet essence of love lost and love yet to be found. As she poured herself into the artwork, she felt a sense of liberation, a release of the emotions she had carried for too long. The canvas transformed beneath her hands, an expression of her heart that she could finally claim as her own. It was a moment of healing, a step toward reclaiming her identity, a way to embrace the echoes of the past while forging a new path. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Elijah hit send on his message, the weight of anticipation settling over him like a shroud. He felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear, unsure of what response he would receive. Yet, as he gazed out the window at the darkening sky, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a quiet affirmation that he had taken the first step toward embracing the love that still lingered in his heart. Unbeknownst to each other, both Amelia and Elijah were finally beginning to navigate their own paths, guided by the echoes of their hearts. They were learning that it was possible to embrace the past while simultaneously forging ahead, and in doing so, they were one step closer to discovering the love that had defined them, and perhaps reclaiming it once more. Chapter 11. In the Presence of Memories. The days following Elijah's message felt suspended in time for both him and Amelia. Each morning, they awoke with a flicker of hope and an undercurrent of anxiety that accompanied the prospect of rekindling their relationship. Both were caught in a delicate dance between the past and the potential future, each moment imbued with an anticipation that made the air feel charged with possibility. Amelia poured herself into her art, finding solace in the canvas as she painted the emotions swirling within her heart. She spent hours at the gallery, her creative spirit igniting with every brushstroke, transforming her longing into vivid colors and swirling patterns. The paintings began to reflect not just her feelings for Elijah, but also her personal growth and the resilience she had discovered within herself. She found herself exploring themes of rebirth, depicting a phoenix rising from the ashes, symbolizing her journey toward healing and self-rediscovery. One sunny afternoon, she hosted an exhibition to showcase her latest works, inviting friends and family to witness her transformation. The gallery buzzed with excitement as visitors admired the pieces that spoke to her experiences of love, loss, and hope. Amelia stood proudly among her creations, her heart swelling with a mix of vulnerability and empowerment. Among the guests was Claire, her closest friend, who had been a steadfast source of support throughout Amelia's journey. Claire beamed with pride as she marveled at the artwork, recognizing the depth of emotion that each piece conveyed. She had witnessed Amelia's struggles, the sleepless nights filled with longing and uncertainty, and now, as she looked at the vibrant canvases, she felt an overwhelming sense of joy for her friend's resilience. As the exhibition progressed, Claire approached Amelia, her eyes shimmering with emotion. She praised the pieces, emphasizing how each stroke seemed to capture the essence of Amelia's spirit, her journey towards self-acceptance, and the beauty that had emerged from pain. Claire urged Amelia to consider how far she had come, how much she had transformed since the days of her heartache. While Amelia basked in the warmth of her friend's encouragement, she couldn't help but feel the lingering absence of Elijah. The desire to share this pivotal moment with him tugged at her heartstrings, a bittersweet reminder of the love that still lingered in the shadows of her mind. Yet, she reminded herself that this exhibition was not just about him. It was about her own growth, her own triumphs. It was a celebration of her journey, one that deserved recognition and acknowledgement. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Elijah found himself grappling with a mix of excitement and apprehension as he awaited Amelia's response. He had poured his heart into the message he sent her, unsure of what the outcome would be. Each passing day felt like an eternity, with his thoughts consumed by memories of her. The way her laughter danced in the air, the gentle light in her eyes, and the connection that had once bound them so tightly together. Elijah had also been navigating his own path of growth since their separation. He threw himself into work, taking on challenging projects that pushed him to expand his skills and creativity. His colleagues admired his dedication, but beneath the surface, he wrestled with a growing sense of emptiness. Success at work felt hollow without Amelia by his side to celebrate the milestones. One evening, after a long day, he decided to take a break from the demands of his career and seek solace in the familiar surroundings of a small park nearby. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, and as he sat on a bench, he watched as couples strolled hand in hand, laughter echoing through the air. Each sound struck a chord within him, a reminder of the moments he and Amelia had shared in similar settings. He closed his eyes, allowing the warmth of the sun to envelop him, and envisioned a future where he and Amelia could walk together again, hand in hand. The thought filled him with a sense of longing and determination. He realized that he wanted to create new memories, to rebuild what had been lost. But he also understood that he needed to be honest about his feelings and intentions. Days turned into a week, and the absence of Amelia's reply weighed heavily on him. He understood that she needed time to process, to consider her own feelings. But the thought of her moving on without him sent a wave of panic coursing through his veins. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old pictures of them together, reminiscing about the happiness that had once filled their lives. Each image sparked memories, laughter shared over ice cream, quiet moments beneath the stars, and promises whispered in the soft glow of candlelight. At last, as the week drew to a close, Amelia's phone buzzed with a notification that sent her heart racing. She had just returned home from the gallery, exhilarated yet exhausted from the emotional energy of the day. The message from Elijah appeared on her screen, and her breath caught in her throat as she read the words that seemed to encapsulate everything she had been feeling. Amelia, I've been thinking of you constantly. I miss what we had, and I believe we can find our way back to each other. I want to meet and talk about everything, where we stand, what we've learned, and how we can move forward together. You mean so much to me, and I hope you feel the same. Her heart swelled at the honesty in his message, and tears filled her eyes as she recalled the countless nights spent wishing they could communicate their emotions, their desires, and their fears. With trembling hands, she began to type her response, pouring her heart into the words that flowed effortlessly from her mind. Yes, Elijah, I've missed you too. I've been thinking about us, about everything we shared and everything we can still be. Let's meet. I'm ready to talk. With a sense of resolve, Amelia hit send, feeling a wave of liberation wash over her. In that moment, she realized that she was no longer the woman consumed by the shadows of her past. She was a woman who had embraced her journey, who had found strength in her vulnerability and courage in her desires. The possibility of rekindling their love felt both exhilarating and terrifying, but she was ready to face it head-on. The following day, they arranged to meet at a cafe, a place that held memories of laughter and shared dreams. As the sun shone down on the bustling streets, both Amelia and Elijah prepared for their encounter, hearts racing with anticipation. Amelia took a moment to gather her thoughts, reminding herself of the growth she had experienced during their time apart. She understood that their journey would not be without challenges, but she felt confident that the foundation of love and connection they had built was worth exploring once more. Elijah, too, found solace in the preparations for their meeting. He believed that they had both grown in ways that would only strengthen their bond. He envisioned a future filled with laughter, creativity, and shared dreams, a future that could rise from the ashes of their past. As they both set off toward the cafe, the universe seemed to conspire in their favor. The autumn leaves danced in the breeze, carrying whispers of hope and new beginnings. With every step they took, their paths drew closer together, the echoes of their hearts resonating with the promise of love that was ready to be rekindled. Chapter 12. A Hope Resurfaced. The day of the reunion dawned with a golden light filtering through the window, bathing Amelia's apartment in a warm glow. She stood in front of the mirror, her reflection a mixture of excitement and trepidation. With each passing moment, her heart raced faster, a constant reminder of the weight of what was to come. She had spent the morning preparing, meticulously choosing her outfit as if it would somehow cloak her in confidence. A soft, flowing dress hung on her frame, its gentle fabric mirroring the delicate nature of the emotions swirling within her. As she applied a touch of makeup, Amelia allowed herself a moment of introspection. She had come so far since the days when her heart felt heavy with despair. The exhibition had marked a turning point, igniting a flame of creativity that had been dimmed by heartache. Yet, as she gazed into her own eyes, she wondered whether the love that had once burned so brightly between her and Elijah could be rekindled after all this time apart. Meanwhile, Elijah was also caught in the grip of anticipation. He paced his apartment, the morning light streaming through the window, casting long shadows on the floor. The cafe they had chosen for their meeting was a quaint little place that served the best coffee in town, a fitting backdrop for their reunion. With each step, he replayed moments from their past in his mind. The laughter they had shared, the dreams they had built, and the profound silence that had eventually separated them. Dressed in a crisp shirt and well-fitted trousers, Elijah felt both anxious and hopeful. He had come to realize that the time apart had not only allowed him to reflect on his feelings for Amelia, but had also challenged him to grow as an individual. He no longer viewed his past with regret, but rather as a series of lessons that had shaped him into a more compassionate and understanding person. As the clock ticked closer to their meeting time, he mentally prepared himself for the conversation ahead. He understood that they needed to navigate the intricacies of their feelings, acknowledge the pain of their separation, and express the hopes they had for their future together. Finally, the moment arrived. As Amelia approached the cafe, her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the apprehension and excitement that surged within her. The familiar scent of roasted coffee beans wafted through the air, mingling with the crispness of autumn leaves scattered on the sidewalk. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, the gentle chime of the bell announcing her arrival. The cafe was warm and inviting, filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of cups. Her gaze scanned the room, and there he was, Elijah, sitting at a corner table, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug. Time seemed to stand still as their eyes locked, a moment that felt both surreal and achingly familiar. Memories rushed back, flooding her with a rush of emotions that had long lain dormant. Elijah stood, his expression a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. As she approached the table, the world around them faded away, leaving just the two of them suspended in a moment that felt like a reunion of souls. He motioned for her to sit, and she took a seat across from him, her heart racing as she tried to gauge the emotions swirling between them. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the silence enveloping them like a warm embrace. It was a silence filled with unspoken words, memories, and dreams that had lingered between them. Each could sense the weight of their shared history, the heartache that had led them to this very moment, and the possibility that lay ahead. As they settled into their seats, a barista approached to take their order, and Elijah quickly ordered a coffee for himself and a chai latte for Amelia, recalling her favorite. The gesture sent a flicker of warmth through her heart, a reminder of the little things they had once cherished about each other. After the barista left, the moment stretched as they absorbed the significance of being in each other's presence once more. Elijah took a deep breath, steeling himself to share his thoughts. He began to express the feelings that had been bottled up inside him during their time apart, sharing the reflections he had gained about their relationship and the impact it had on his life. He spoke of the nights he had spent yearning for her presence, the moments that felt incomplete without her laughter echoing beside him. Amelia listened intently, her heart swelling with understanding. Each word he spoke resonated with her own experiences, and she felt a rush of connection to the man sitting across from her. The conversation unfolded like a tapestry, weaving together their shared memories, the lessons they had learned, and the desires they had for the future. As they talked, the cafe filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the world outside continued to bustle with life. But for Amelia and Elijah, time had slowed down, allowing them to reconnect on a deeper level. They shared stories of their journeys since their separation, the challenges they had faced, and the ways they had both grown. Amelia spoke of her art, the catharsis it had provided her, and the way it had helped her channel her emotions into something beautiful. Elijah listened, captivated by the passion that radiated from her. Their discussion turned toward the possibility of a future together. Elijah expressed his hope that they could build something new, something stronger than before, rooted in the understanding and growth they had achieved separately. He emphasized the importance of taking things one step at a time, allowing their relationship to evolve organically. Amelia nodded, feeling a sense of alignment with his vision. The conversation flowed effortlessly, the initial nerves dissipating as they delved deeper into their emotions. Laughter echoed around them, punctuated by moments of heartfelt vulnerability. As they shared dreams of the future, they found solace in the realization that their connection had not waned but had instead transformed into something richer and more profound. Yet, beneath the warmth of their reunion, Amelia couldn't shake the remnants of doubt that lingered in the back of her mind. She understood that rekindling their love would not erase the pain of their past, There would be hurdles to overcome, memories to confront, and emotions to navigate. But as she looked into Elijah's eyes, filled with sincerity and hope, she felt a growing belief that they could face those challenges together. The cafe around them began to fill with the sounds of clinking plates and the chatter of patrons, a reminder of the world that continued to spin outside of their cocoon. The hours slipped away unnoticed, and as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the cafe windows, they knew it was time to step back into reality. As they left the cafe, the cool evening air enveloped them, and Amelia felt a sense of possibility hanging in the atmosphere. With each step they took, it became evident that they were not just two individuals walking side by side. They were two souls reuniting, ready to explore the uncharted territory of their relationship. As they strolled through the nearby park, the leaves crunched underfoot, and the stars began to twinkle overhead. The beauty of the moment wrapped around them like a soft embrace, and in that stillness, they understood that their paths had converged once more. Amelia turned to Elijah, her heart full of gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this point. They paused, taking in the beauty of the night sky, a tapestry of stars illuminating the darkness. She realized that while the past had shaped them, it was the present that held the power to redefine their future. In that moment, under the vastness of the universe, they shared a silent promise to each other. A promise to cherish the love that had brought them together, to nurture it with honesty, understanding, and an unwavering commitment to grow side by side. The night unfolded around them, filled with the whispers of possibility and the echoes of a love reborn. Chapter 13. Where Regret Cannot Dwell. In the days that followed their reunion, a subtle shift enveloped Amelia and Elijah's lives. The air between them crackled with a new energy, an unspoken agreement that they were embarking on a journey together, one that required both courage and vulnerability. Each day felt like a fresh canvas, waiting to be painted with the colors of their shared experiences, the hues of their evolving relationship. Amelia threw herself into her artwork with renewed fervor. The inspiration that flowed from her heart now felt more profound, as if every brushstroke was infused with the love and hope she had rekindled with Elijah. The gallery that had once been a space for healing became a sanctuary for their shared dreams, a place where their individual paths intersected, creating a tapestry of creativity and passion. She painted with an intensity that reflected her emotional landscape, capturing the beauty of her connection with Elijah while also exploring the complexities that lay beneath the surface. Each piece took on a life of its own, depicting not just their romance, but also the challenges they would face together. The colors she chose seemed to echo the palette of her feelings: brilliant reds for passion, deep blues for introspection, and gentle greens for the hope that had blossomed in her heart. Elijah, too, found himself navigating the waters of change. Inspired by Amelia's artistic journey, he began to explore his own creative outlets. He started writing again, tapping into the depths of his imagination and crafting stories that mirrored the experiences of his heart. Each word he penned became a reflection of his longing, his desires, and the hope that had reignited within him since reuniting with Amelia. As he sat in a quiet cafe, his laptop open before him, Elijah felt a sense of liberation wash over him. The words flowed effortlessly, and with each sentence, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to process the myriad emotions that accompanied his rekindled relationship with Amelia. He poured his heart onto the pages, capturing the essence of their journey: the joy, the challenges, and the promise of a future filled with possibilities. Yet, as they both embraced their respective creative pursuits, they also encountered the realities of their situation. The past, though filled with love, had left scars that needed attention. It became increasingly clear that while they longed to rebuild their relationship, They also needed to confront the lingering doubts and fears that threatened to overshadow their progress. One evening, as they strolled through a nearby park, the air filled with the crisp scent of fallen leaves, Amelia felt a pang of anxiety. The ease of their connection, the laughter they shared, sometimes felt overshadowed by the gravity of their history. The conversation they had at the cafe had laid a foundation, but now, as they walked side by side, she sensed the importance of addressing the unspoken fears that lingered in the background. Turning to Elijah, she felt her heart racing as she considered how to express her thoughts. Their journey together was not just about rekindling a romance. It was about understanding the changes they had both undergone and how those changes affected their relationship moving forward. She understood that love was not merely about the joyous moments. It was also about facing challenges head-on, learning to navigate the complexities that arose from their past. As they continued walking, Amelia took a deep breath and shared her feelings, allowing her vulnerability to flow freely. She spoke of her fears, the nagging thoughts that sometimes crept in, whispering doubts about whether they could truly overcome the hurdles that had once driven them apart. She expressed her desire to ensure that their relationship was built on a solid foundation, one that acknowledged the lessons learned from their separation. Elijah listened intently, his heart swelling with admiration for Amelia's courage. He too had felt the weight of their history, the uncertainty that came with rekindling a love that had been tested by time. As she spoke, he reflected on his own journey, the moments of doubt that had surfaced since their reunion. He shared his thoughts, articulating the importance of acknowledging their past while simultaneously looking toward the future. They had both grown, and their experiences had shaped them into individuals who were now more equipped to face the challenges ahead. Together, they could create a love that was not only resilient, but also deeply rooted in understanding and acceptance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, they found a park bench to sit upon, surrounded by the soft rustling of leaves. The atmosphere felt sacred, as if the universe was conspiring to support their journey of growth. It was in this quiet moment, sitting together under the vast expanse of the sky, that they both understood the depth of their commitment to each other. In the days that followed, they continued to navigate the complexities of their relationship. The balance between vulnerability and strength became a dance they both learned to embrace. Each day brought new insights, and as they faced challenges together, they discovered that their love was evolving into something more profound, a partnership rooted in mutual respect, empathy, and unwavering support. Amelia found herself pouring her emotions into her artwork with even greater passion, using her paintings to explore the nuances of their relationship. Each piece became a reflection of their journey, the ups and downs, the moments of joy, and the challenges they faced. She created a series titled Resilient Hearts, depicting the journey of love that transformed through trials and tribulations. Each canvas captured a different facet of their relationship, illustrating the beauty that emerged from the depths of vulnerability. Elijah, inspired by Amelia's artistic expression, began to share snippets of his writing with her. His stories resonated with her, weaving together themes of love, loss, and redemption. They became a source of connection, deepening their bond as they discussed their creative endeavors. Through their art and writing, they began to see reflections of their own experiences, gaining a deeper understanding of the love that continued to blossom between them. As the weeks passed, they grew more comfortable with the changes that accompanied their rekindled romance. They celebrated small victories, moments of laughter shared over coffee, quiet evenings spent lost in each other's company, and the gentle touches that ignited the spark between them. Each experience solidified the foundation they were building, reinforcing their commitment to one another. Yet, amid the joy, there were moments of introspection. Amelia occasionally found herself reflecting on the nature of love, the complexities that came with it. She had learned that love was not always a fairy tale. It was messy, sometimes painful, and often required hard work. She understood that in order to embrace the future, they needed to confront their past, allowing themselves to heal from the scars that lingered. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Amelia's apartment, watching the sun set over the city skyline, she turned to Elijah with a serious expression. She voiced her concerns, acknowledging that while they had made significant progress, it was crucial for them to openly communicate their feelings and address any lingering doubts. She wanted to ensure that their love was built on honesty, transparency, and a shared understanding of each other's needs. Elijah nodded, his heart swelling with appreciation for her candor. He recognized the importance of these conversations, understanding that they were essential to forging a stronger connection. He assured her that he was committed to being open and honest about his feelings, that he, too, wanted to confront the shadows of their past together. Under the starlit sky, they found solace in their commitment to each other. They held hands, fingers interlaced, a physical representation of their bond, a connection that was becoming increasingly resilient with each passing day. As they gazed into each other's eyes, they recognized the transformative power of love, the way it had the ability to heal wounds, foster growth, and inspire hope. As the night deepened, they continued to embrace the changes unfolding in their lives, united in their shared desire to create a future filled with love, understanding, and endless possibilities. They understood that the road ahead would not always be smooth, but together, they were willing to navigate the complexities, embracing each challenge as an opportunity for growth. In the days that followed, Amelia and Elijah made a pact to support each other through the trials that lay ahead, to celebrate the small victories, and to nurture the love that had blossomed between them. They recognized that change was an inevitable part of their journey, but with each other by their side, they were ready to embrace it, one step at a time. Chapter 14: Two Roads Converging. As the dawn of a new day broke, casting golden rays of sunlight through the window, Amelia felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. The sun's warmth seeped into her bones, yet it couldn't dispel the chill of uncertainty that gripped her heart. It was time for her and Elijah to confront the ghosts of their pasts, to face the shadows that lingered beneath the surface of their renewed love. The previous weeks had been filled with joy and discovery, but beneath the laughter and shared moments lay unaddressed feelings, experiences that had shaped them in profound ways. While they had embraced change and nurtured their blossoming connection, both Amelia and Elijah understood that healing from their previous separation required more than just love. It required honest conversations about the pain they had endured. Determined to address these issues, Amelia spent the morning preparing a quiet, reflective space at her apartment. She arranged cushions on the floor, lit candles that flickered softly in the gentle breeze, and placed a vase of fresh flowers on the coffee table, their bright colors symbolizing the hope she felt for the future. As she worked, a mix of excitement and dread filled her chest, a reminder that confronting the past could be as daunting as it was necessary. Elijah arrived shortly after noon, the familiar warmth of his presence filling the room. He entered with a slight hesitance, his eyes scanning the inviting space Amelia had created. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of the emotional weight they both carried. They had both grown, yet the scars of their history were still present, lingering like whispers in the corners of their minds. Amelia gestured for Elijah to sit beside her, their legs nearly touching. As they settled into their surroundings, she felt a deep breath escape her lips, as if releasing the tension that had built within her. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, knowing that the path ahead would require both courage and tenderness. The air hummed with anticipation, a mixture of nerves and the undeniable bond they had forged. With the flickering candlelight casting a soft glow around them, Amelia began to share her thoughts. She spoke of the loneliness that had followed their separation, the ache that had settled in her heart when she realized their love had drifted apart. Each word she spoke felt like a release, an unburdening of emotions that had been held captive for far too long. As she recounted her journey of healing through her art, she revealed the depth of her vulnerability, the moments when doubt had threatened to eclipse her hope. Elijah listened intently, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He felt her pain as if it were his own, recognizing the threads of their shared history that wove through each of her experiences. When she finished, he found the courage to express his own feelings. He spoke of the mistakes he had made, the moments of weakness that had driven a wedge between them. He recalled the times he had allowed fear to dictate his choices, causing both of them to suffer. In the stillness that followed, the atmosphere was thick with emotions, remorse, understanding, and an undeniable connection that had weathered the storm of their past. They both understood that this moment was crucial, a turning point in their journey together. Each revelation served as a stepping stone toward healing, paving the way for a future built on honesty and trust. As they navigated the landscape of their emotions, Amelia and Elijah began to address the specific incidents that had caused rifts in their relationship. They spoke of misunderstandings, unmet expectations, and the pain of separation that had followed. With every revelation, they peeled back layers of their history, exposing the raw vulnerabilities that had shaped them into who they were today. Amelia described the feelings of abandonment that had crept in when Elijah had distanced himself during their separation. She recalled the nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if he still thought of her, if he regretted their decision to part ways. Each confession was met with Elijah's sincere acknowledgement of her pain, his heart aching for the hurt he had inadvertently caused. He expressed his own feelings of confusion and regret, sharing how lost he had felt without her presence in his life. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room, they delved deeper into their emotional histories. They reflected on how their past relationships had influenced their perceptions of love and trust, how those experiences had led them to build walls around their hearts. Amelia spoke of her struggles with vulnerability, her fear of being hurt again. Elijah, in turn, revealed his insecurities, the fear of inadequacy that had often held him back from fully embracing the love they had once shared. With each conversation, they began to feel a sense of liberation, a release of the burdens they had carried alone for far too long. The act of sharing their innermost feelings created a deeper bond between them, an unspoken understanding that they were both committed to facing the challenges ahead. As the evening descended, casting a gentle twilight glow around them, Amelia felt a shift within herself. The act of confronting their past had transformed from a daunting task into a source of empowerment. She realized that acknowledging their history was not a sign of weakness, but rather an essential step toward building a stronger foundation for their love. They ended the day in a comfortable silence, the warmth of their connection enveloping them like a cozy blanket. The candlelight flickered gently, mirroring the steady rhythm of their breaths as they sat side by side, reflecting on the day's revelations. Amelia felt a sense of peace settle over her, an understanding that they had taken significant strides toward healing. In the days that followed, Amelia and Elijah continued to engage in open discussions about their past, each conversation leading to greater clarity and understanding. They made a pact to check in with each other regularly, to create a safe space where vulnerability was not just welcomed but celebrated. It was a commitment to nurturing their emotional landscape, ensuring that their love would be rooted in trust, compassion, and resilience. As they walked through the park on a crisp autumn afternoon, surrounded by trees painted in vibrant hues of orange and gold, Amelia felt a lightness in her heart. The beauty of nature mirrored the blossoming love they were cultivating, fragile yet powerful, delicate yet enduring. Elijah reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, and she felt a surge of warmth wash over her. It was in these simple gestures that she found comfort, the gentle squeeze of his hand, the way he looked at her with eyes full of admiration. Each moment spent together became a reminder of the love they had fought to reclaim, a love that was no longer overshadowed by past hurts. Together, they embraced the present, savoring the sweetness of their newfound understanding. With every step they took, they felt more attuned to each other, more committed to creating a future that honored their past while celebrating the love they shared. As the days turned into weeks, Amelia and Elijah's bond deepened. They continued to explore their creative outlets, finding inspiration in the beauty of their journey. With each passing day, they felt more like partners in every sense of the word, working together to build a love that could withstand the tests of time. In this chapter of their lives, they learned that confronting the past was not just about healing old wounds, but also about embracing the strength that came from vulnerability. With their hearts open and their spirits entwined, Amelia and Elijah moved forward, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, hand in hand. Chapter 15. The Silent Embrace of Tomorrow. The winter nights grew longer, casting a quiet spell over the town. Snowflakes danced through the air, swirling in the soft light of the street lamps that lined the streets. Amelia and Elijah had settled into a comfortable routine in their home, but the serenity was beginning to fray at the edges. The warmth of their love flickered like the flames in their fireplace, a comforting glow amidst the uncertainty that loomed around them. Amelia had recently received an enticing job offer from a prestigious gallery in the city. The opportunity was a dream come true for her, a chance to elevate her career and showcase her artistic vision on a larger stage. However, the prospect of leaving behind the life she had built with Elijah weighed heavily on her heart. Each day, she felt the thrill of the offer collide with the dread of separation, creating a turmoil within her that she struggled to express. Elijah, too, felt the shadows of doubt creeping into their relationship. His responsibilities at the community center had intensified, pulling him deeper into the demands of his work. He found himself coming home later each night, fatigue etched into his features. The exhaustion dulled the brightness of his connection with Amelia, and as he sank into the depths of his commitments, he couldn't help but notice the distance forming between them. One evening, while sitting by the fire, Amelia found herself lost in thought, her mind wandering through the myriad possibilities that lay ahead. The crackling of the flames echoed her inner conflict, each pop and hiss a reminder of the duality of her situation. She envisioned a future where she could thrive in her career, yet that vision felt incomplete without Elijah by her side. The winter landscape outside mirrored her feelings of isolation. The snow blanketed the ground, muffling sounds and creating a hushed atmosphere that weighed on her heart. She yearned for the warmth of Elijah's presence, yet the uncertainty of their future loomed like the heavy clouds that hung low in the sky. As the days passed, the pressure of her decision began to take its toll. Amelia withdrew into herself, her thoughts spiraling as she grappled with the consequences of pursuing her dreams. Elijah sensed the change in her demeanor, but felt powerless to penetrate the silence that had taken root. The affection that once flowed freely between them was now accompanied by an unspoken tension, each of them caught in their individual struggles. One snowy afternoon, Amelia took a walk through the nearby park, hoping the crisp air would clear her mind. The trees, stripped bare by winter, stood resolute against the cold, their branches heavy with snow. As she meandered along the paths, she felt a kinship with the landscape. The trees, much like her, endured the harshness of the season, waiting for the promise of spring. In that moment, she realized that she, too, could find resilience amidst the challenges she faced. Meanwhile, Elijah spent his evenings at the community center, pouring his energy into helping others. The children he worked with brought him joy, yet his heart ached for Amelia. He recalled the moments they had shared, the laughter that had filled their home, and the warmth of their embraces. He felt a longing to reconnect with her, to bridge the growing distance, but he was unsure of how to approach the situation. The fear of losing her gnawed at him, a silent weight that pressed against his chest. As winter wore on, the turning tide became evident in their interactions. They navigated their days with a sense of caution, careful not to broach the subject that lingered in the air between them. Every shared meal became a careful dance around their feelings, each glance a reminder of the unspoken truths they both carried. Amelia found herself torn between ambition and love, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her dreams could potentially pull her away from the very person she cherished. The gallery offered an opportunity for growth, yet the thought of leaving Elijah behind felt like a betrayal of their shared journey. In the quiet moments of reflection, she questioned whether she could truly have both, the career she desired and the love that sustained her. One stormy evening, as the winds howled outside, a sense of urgency surged within her. She had spent enough time lingering in the shadows of doubt. It was time to confront the reality of her situation and communicate her feelings to Elijah. She realized that true love required vulnerability, an openness to share both dreams and fears. Back at home, the storm raged on, but within the confines of their warm living room, Amelia resolved to take the first step. She understood that if they were to navigate this pivotal moment together, she needed to express the turmoil that had become a constant in her mind. Her heart raced at the thought, but the idea of remaining silent any longer filled her with dread. Elijah returned home late that night, exhausted but determined. The weight of his responsibilities had taken its toll, but as he entered their shared space, he felt an undeniable pull toward Amelia. The flickering light from the fireplace cast a warm glow around the room, offering a brief respite from the chaos of the outside world. As they sat side by side, the air thick with unspoken words, Amelia gathered her thoughts. She felt the warmth of Elijah's presence beside her, a reminder of the love they had fought to reclaim. In that moment, the realization struck her. Love, like the changing seasons, required nurturing, effort, and, above all, honesty. As she prepared to share her thoughts, the storm outside began to subside, the winds shifting to a gentle breeze. It felt like a sign, a promise of hope amidst the uncertainty that had enveloped them. With her heart pounding, she began to weave the threads of her feelings, ready to confront the turning tide that had threatened to pull them apart. The chapter closed on a moment of anticipation, a poignant pause before the tide would shift, ushering in a new understanding and a reaffirmation of their love. Chapter 16, A New Dawn. The dawn of a new day broke over the horizon, casting soft golden rays across the landscape still shrouded in winter's embrace. As the sun began to rise, Amelia and Elijah sat together in the quiet warmth of their home, the earlier storm now a memory. The air felt charged with possibility, as if the world itself was exhaling after holding its breath through the long, dark night. In the previous weeks, they had navigated a storm of their own, wrestling with fears and dreams that had threatened to pull them apart. But with the turning tide came clarity, and the words they had once hesitated to speak were now a bridge to understanding. The love that had endured the tests of time and circumstance was ready to flourish in the light of a new beginning. Amelia awoke that morning with a sense of renewal coursing through her veins. The decision she had made to accept the gallery position had not come easily, but she felt a profound sense of peace in her choice. It wasn't merely about her career. It was about her journey, a journey she wished to embark on with Elijah by her side. She envisioned a future where they both thrived, where ambition intertwined with love, creating a tapestry rich with experiences and shared dreams. Elijah stirred beside her, the light gently illuminating the features of his face. He appeared peaceful in his sleep, a serene expression that reminded Amelia of the strength he had shown throughout their challenges. She felt a surge of affection for him, grateful for his unwavering support even during their most trying moments. As he slowly opened his eyes and met her gaze, she felt a warmth spread through her heart, a silent understanding passing between them, as if they both sensed the turning of the page in their story. With the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting its brilliance over the snow-draped landscape, Amelia and Elijah spent the morning savoring the simplicity of being together. They prepared a breakfast filled with laughter and warmth, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pancakes. Each bite was a reminder of their shared life, a testament to the beauty that could be found in the ordinary. After breakfast, they bundled up and stepped outside into the winter wonderland. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked hand in hand, the world around them sparkling like a scene from a fairy tale. They wandered through the park, their laughter ringing out against the crisp air, and Amelia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The openness of the day felt like a promise, each breath invigorating her spirit. As they strolled, they discussed their dreams and aspirations, an open dialogue flowing between them like a river. Amelia spoke of her excitement for the gallery and the projects she envisioned bringing to life. Elijah, in turn, shared his hopes for the community center, expressing a desire to expand their programs and reach more children in need. Each word they exchanged strengthened the bond they had formed, and with every step they took together, they were building a future filled with purpose. The sun continued its ascent, and as they reached the top of a small hill, the vista before them unfolded in breathtaking beauty. The landscape, blanketed in glistening snow, shimmered under the bright blue sky. Amelia paused to take it all in, the beauty of the moment resonating deep within her. She felt a sense of gratitude wash over her, thankful for the journey that had led her to this point, to Elijah, and to the promise of what lay ahead. Elijah stood beside her, his presence a comforting anchor in the midst of the vastness of the world. He placed an arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer, and together they marveled at the beauty surrounding them. In that moment, they were reminded that their love was not just a refuge but a source of inspiration and strength. The challenges they had faced had only served to deepen their connection, allowing them to grow individually and as a couple. With the sun now high in the sky, casting a warm glow over everything, Amelia turned to Elijah, her heart brimming with emotions. She realized that while the road ahead would hold challenges, they were no longer daunting. Together, they had found a rhythm that embraced both their individual dreams and their shared aspirations. As the day continued, they returned home and began to plan their future more intentionally. They discussed how to balance her new job with their relationship, setting aside dedicated time for each other despite the demands of their separate lives. They created a vision board filled with images of their dreams, art exhibitions, community events, and travel adventures, reminding them that their lives were intertwined in ways that were both meaningful and exhilarating. Weeks turned into months, and as the season shifted from winter to spring, so too did their relationship. Amelia flourished in her new role, while Elijah's initiatives at the community center garnered recognition. They embraced their individual paths while nurturing the love that had brought them back together. The distance that once seemed insurmountable transformed into a bridge that connected their hearts even more deeply. In the vibrant blossoms of spring, they found a renewed sense of hope and joy. They took weekend trips to explore new places, immersing themselves in different cultures and experiences. Each adventure solidified their bond, and the laughter they shared filled their hearts with an unshakable sense of belonging. They learned to communicate openly about their desires, ensuring that both their voices were heard in the narrative of their lives. As they stood on the precipice of summer, Elijah planned a surprise for Amelia, a celebration of their journey and the love that had withstood the test of time. He envisioned a picnic in the park where they had shared so many dreams, filled with her favorite foods and surrounded by the beauty of nature. The thought of seeing her smile lit a fire within him, and he couldn't wait to surprise her. On the day of the picnic, the sun shone brightly, and the air was fragrant with blooming flowers. Elijah arrived early, laying out the blanket and arranging the picnic basket filled with treats he had prepared. As Amelia approached, the look of surprise on her face was worth every effort he had put into the day. They spent hours laughing, reminiscing about their journey, and reflecting on how far they had come. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue across the sky, Elijah took a moment to express his gratitude for Amelia. He spoke of the strength he found in her love, the inspiration she brought into his life, and the unwavering support she had given him through their trials. He reminded her that their love was a partnership, one built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared dreams. With the last rays of sunlight illuminating their surroundings, Amelia felt a rush of emotions as she realized that their journey had transformed them both. They were no longer just two individuals navigating the complexities of life. They were partners in every sense of the word, ready to face whatever challenges came their way together. As twilight descended, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, each one a reminder of the dreams they had nurtured. In that moment, they understood that love was not merely a feeling. It was a commitment to growth, to embracing change, and to supporting each other through the ebbs and flows of life. The chapter of their lives that had once felt uncertain was now a testament to resilience, love, and the beauty of second chances. With hearts intertwined and dreams aligned, Amelia and Elijah looked forward to the horizon, ready to embrace the journey ahead, hand in hand, side by side. In the quiet of the night, beneath a tapestry of stars, they understood that they had found a new dawn, a promise of love that would carry them into the future, no matter what lay ahead.